In this session, we discuss with local and global scope in Python. Parameters and variables that are assigned in a called function are set to exist in that function's local scope. Variables that are assigned outside all functions are set to exist in the global scope. A variable that exists in a local scope is called a local variable, while a variable that exists in a global scope is called a global variable. Okay, parameters or variables that are assigned in the called function are set to exist in the local scope. Okay, outside the function, when we are declaring any variables, that we call it as a global scope. A variable must be one or the other. It cannot be both local and global. When a scope is destroyed, all the values stored in the scope's variables are forgotten. There is only one global scope and it is created when a program begins. When a program terminates, the global scope is destroyed and all its variables are forgotten. A local scope is created whenever a function is called. Any variables assigned in this function exist within the local scope. When the function returns, the local scope is destroyed and these variables are forgotten. Scopes matter for several reasons. A code in the global scope cannot use any local variables. However, a local scope can access global variables. Code in a function's local scope cannot use variables in any other local scope. We can use the same name of different variables if they are in different scopes. That is, there can be local variable named spam and a global variable also named spam. So these are the things we need to understand about scopes of a particular variable. Okay, code in a global scope cannot be used any local variables. However, a local scope can access global variables. Okay, so by keeping this in mind, we'll see with the examples for this. The first thing is local variables cannot be used in global scope. Consider this program. Okay, here we see the program def spam off. So now spam off is a function. In that we have a statement called x is equals to some value we are assigning it. Spam off function when we call, in that you will be getting called to a spam function. So when you call this, you'll be getting an error message. Okay, so then that is traceback error. Okay, x is not defined because x what we are assigning or what we are doing this assignment operations. So now this x is present inside your function, correct? So that is for local scope. But when we try to print x, so that x variable is present in a global scope now. So we have not defined it. The x we have defined only inside the local scope. That means the local variable cannot be used in a global scope. See now, print x. This x is now in a global scope. That means it is outside the function. This x what we have taken it is inside the function. So assignment is done inside the function. When we wanted to print this answer, we need to make a print function within this function itself. But we try to print the values outside the function. That means it is global scope. So in the global scope, we try to access a local variable. It is not possible. So the error happens because the X variable exists only in the local scope created when a spam is called. Once a program execution returns from the spam, that local scope is destroyed and there is no longer variable named X. So that is why we get a error that there is no X has been, the variable has been defined. So it has been defined inside the function, that is a local scope, but when we return from the function, the X will be destroyed. Since it is in a local scope, it cannot be accessed by the global scope. Local scopes cannot use variables in other local scopes. So this is the second one. A new local scope is created whenever a function is called, including when a function is called from another function. Consider this example, diff spam. That means you are creating a one function spam. Inside that you have a variable x and you are assigning with a value 19. And inside that function you are calling one more function called beckon. So once you call this function, you will be executing this beckon function. So different beckons. So here ham is equals to 101. You have this one more variable you're taking, and this you're assigning with the 101, and x is equals to 0. So you are assigning x variable to 0. Okay. Again, after doing this, we go back to print x in the spam function itself. So here we have two functions. One is beckon and spam. Once the spam is called, you are assigning a x value with a 19, and you call with another function beckon. So beckon, here again you are assigning a ham variable with another value, and you are giving x to 0. So after doing this modification, you go back to spam and print the x. So what is the result of it? We see with this. Okay, so there is an explanation as it is. Okay, see. Okay. So here you can see when the program starts, the spam function is called and the local scope is created. The local variables is x is set to 99. Then both the beckon function is called. The second local scope is created. Multiple local scopes can exist at the same time. In this new local scope, the local variable ham is set to 101 and the local variable x, which is different from the one in the spam's local scope, is also created. When beckon returns, the local scope for that call is destroyed. The program execution continues in the spam function to print the values of x. And since the local scope for the call of spam still exists here, the x variable is set to 99. So that is what. See, in this example, the x was initialized to 99 even though you called beckon and you have made initialization of x to 0, but when you start returning from beckon and to spam, okay, the x variable, whatever the value you've done assignment will be get destroyed, and when we print it, we print the value whichever it is there in a spam, that is 99. We're not printing the value 0. That is what local scopes cannot use variables in other local scopes. So X is already there and X is you are also eventualized, but this local scope variable cannot be used inside this local scope. Global variables can be read from a local scope. So consider this example, spam. Okay, here you are creating one function and here you are printing a x. Since even though you have not initialized any value to x, but you can access it since it was a global variable. It is present in a global scope. X is equals to 42. So it is a global variable. You have initialized with the value 42. So when you call your spam, so the function execute and it prints a value 42. Okay, and here again, if you print x value also, it prints 42 only. Okay, because it is a global variable, it can even be accessed in a local scope and even it can be accessed in a global scope. Local and global variables with the same name. Okay, so here to simplify, avoid using local variables that have a same name as a global variable name or another local variable name. We can do this. Okay, usually we avoid it because to get that's confusion to be not there. So we are not using the same name for local and global, but we can do it. Okay, so diff spam. So x is equals to spam local print x. So you're going to print here. So then again, beckon also you're having another x is equals to beckon local print x. Okay. So spam, when we called a spam and again you're going to print. So here you see this is your global. X is equals to global scope. So this is a global variable So we are initialized with the value global. And when we call beacon, we are calling a function beacon, it comes here. So x is equals to beacon local. So now this will be assigned as a beacon local. So print x. Now it prints a beacon local. And again you call inside the function spam. So here again you go x is equals to spam local. So this prints a spam local. Again you come back here, print x. Again it contains only this local scope variable only. It will not take this local scope. So it prints a beacon local only again. Then again, after completion of this, you'll return back to this global scope. So again, you have here is print x. So it prints what? Global, because it cannot take a value which has been assigned in the global scope, sorry, local scope. It used to print the value which is assigned in the global scope itself. So it prints a global as a value. Okay, that's what is explained here. Okay, so there are like three x variable exist in all the three scopes. Okay, but even we can have a same name in all global scope also and even the local scope also. Okay, but to make a confusion to be avoided, we will not usually keep the same names. Okay, so continue with this concept. We see other concepts of this particular functions in next video. Thank you.